So thanks everybody for jumping into the August 2022 edition of the Greater Philadelphia Mac Admins. We're calling this the Security Edition because that's what it is. So let me click that there. So we do have a quick agenda for today. We're just going to go over what's new in macOS 12.5, 13, some items of interest, conferences, and then our special guests, Allen and Dan. Which I'll let them introduce themselves when we get there. They can wait. And then, of course, we'll have our open discussion where anything goes, where we'll not be recording. Just like what we were doing before we started this during the recording, which will be cut out. So start off with what's new. Well, hopefully everybody's aware, macOS 12.5 came out. I believe it was a few weeks ago, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. With this update, got some improved network extension stability. I don't know how many people have run into that, but I myself had, and a lot of issues with network extensions causing network dropouts. So they seem to have stabilized something. 50 security fixes in this one, and there's the links here go to the release notes and the security fixes, and then any enterprise release notes. I don't think there was anything major added to this besides that. All right, macOS 13, Ventura. We're obviously not allowed to speak in a public forum or record regarding macOS 13, but we can go over what is public knowledge. Beta 5 was released yesterday, so if you haven't updated, there's some new things in there you might want to test, which we could probably discuss later. New PPPC for root agents to update apps. Great. If you've been beta testing, you probably have seen some of this stuff and are very thankful that Apple is listening to the admins. Platform SSO has been some advancements, and of course a lot more, which I am not at liberty to say. Read your NDAs, everyone. Robert Hammond did do a PSU Mac Admins presentation, which that's where some people here, I'm sure, might have heard that this meeting was going on, but there was a PSU presentation that he did. I think it was 2 weeks ago. There's a link to it in the slide deck that will be posted later. Items of interest. So we were just talking about the second wave of Mac Admins Foundation merch has been put out. I am wearing the first wave. Very nice heathered blue or purple, whatever color it is. It's very comfortable. So highly recommended. I also have a baseball tee, which I ordered after I saw how cool it looked. But second round has some nicer, some really neat shirts, including the macOS screen reader, voiceover screen reader, which is probably one of the best shirts that I've seen in a long time for Mac Admins. There's a code there for 10% off, thanks 10, and that goes until the 15th. So you got a few days to get that order in. And definitely support your Mac Admins Foundation. They're doing great work, as we had Tom on on the last meeting to discuss it. This was quite an interesting one. VMware is going to be discontinuing support of macOS as a guest OS in Fusion and vSphere ESXi. So I believe what this narrows down to is that macOS 13 is going to be the last macOS that you can virtualize in VMware Fusion. Don't quote me on that, but there's some links there that I think people would find interesting. They basically, in a sense, are saying we're done with supporting it as a guest OS. And then the tech preview, speaking of VMware Fusion not supporting it, the tech preview now supports Windows 11 virtualization on Apple Silicon. So you can grab that from that link. It's a free tech preview. You don't have to buy it or anything. It's just sign up for an account and you get it. And it's been pretty stable. I don't know who has been using it.
I don't know if this is of interest to anybody, but Parallels did release a new major version that does support macOS as a guest OS and supports a bunch of new features on macOS. And they're owned by Corel now, and strangely are still doing things like they used to. So, but there's also a few open source options for that too, if you want.
Yeah, what is UTM is another good option. I've been using that it's really nice. And one thing I didn't add in this one that I totally forgot about is anybody that's following the Linux for Apple Silicon, Asahi Linux put up like a really nice blog post about what their support looks like and how they basically they're trying to make their flavor of Linux the choice of Linux for Apple Silicon, and they're doing some great work. If you haven't checked out Asahi Linux, I think it's Asahi, that's how you say it. Really nice thing to check out. And
Yep.
I'll see if I can post that.
Yeah.
I'll post it in chat. Everything, Chad?
Oh, I was saying, I was able to successfully install Windows 95 on my M1 Mac, which, was a weird thing that I did on a weekend one time with that UTM thing. So lots of fun virtualization things going on.
Blazing fast. And yes, Howard Oakley's series on virtualization on Apple Silicon, there's a few parts there, 8 parts. So if anybody's interested in looking at that, again, the links will be posted in the deck, which will be posted on our site. Conferences, not much has changed since our last one, except PSU is no longer up here. So we have Objective by the Sea 5.0 in October in Spain. I don't know if anybody here is going. Nobody's lucky enough to go. All right.
With JNUC being the week before. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. DevOps YVR videos are online. PSU MacAdmin's campfire sessions are also online. Mac Sysadmins in October as well. And of course, the big one, JNUC, is in September. So I know several people that are going to be there, including we have a Jamf on the line who is one of our special guests today. So right now, I want to just hand this off to Allen Golbig and Dan Brodjieski. Allen is from Jamf, and Dan works at NASA. I'm going to have them talk, and I'm going to stop screen sharing and have them do better intros because I'm not good at this. So it's all you guys.
Sure. Hey everyone. Not sure. So Dan and I didn't really, because we kind of did our JNUC virtual recording today, so we're kind of presenting burned out. But we kind of wanted to just come talk about some of the new stuff in the project. Happy to go over some of if there are people on the Zoom that haven't experienced the project or seen it at all, happy to go through that. But yeah, before that, I'm Allen Golbig. I'm a consulting engineer at Jamf, and I cannot grow a beard like Dan.
Hey everyone, I'm Dan Brodjieski. I currently am working at NASA in their cybersecurity standards and engineering team as their platform lead. Actually, this was the role that Allen had previously before he went to Jamf. So I came on board here back in October. So I guess I'm coming up on a year here. So, but yeah, here we like Allen said, this morning we did our recording of our JNUC session and talking about the project, and but yeah, happy to discuss it and show you guys a little bit how it works if you're familiar with it, if there's questions or anything of the like.
So I'm going to start off here since I guess I'm going to MC a little bit. So for those unaware, the project we're talking about is the macOS security compliance project. Can you just go over a general idea, the elevator pitch of what exactly it is and why, well, not exactly, but what it is and how it came to be, I guess, how it came to fruition?
Sure. So every year new OS comes out, and every year we were, Dan, Bob, and I were asked, hey, do you have your security baselines? Dan was at DoD, so he had to, he had the STIG. At NASA, we had our own internal security baselines. They were slightly based off of the STIG. Like, we took things from the STIG, we took things from CIS. It was kind of just like a mix of everything. But every year you had to wait, right? You had to wait for new versions of CIS to come out. You had to wait for the STIG to be approved, all this stuff. And then
NIST also had their guidance.
Oh yeah, but
that wasn't updated for years. I think, what was it, 10.12 was there?
Yeah, they had 800, 179, which was just superseded by 800.219, which is geared towards the project. But yeah, the 179 was their last, like, this is what you should do to secure your Mac, and that was for 10.12. So we were kind of approached by Apple because we had good relationships with our SEs on the Gov side, and we kind of just started tinkering, and I was doing a lot of work with ASCII doc and YAML, and we kind of just built this thing that has gotten way too big. And our joke is that nobody actually uses it. Although now that I'm at Jamf and I not in, like this like isolated world, I realize too many people are using it, and it's kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, I can go run through like kind of the GitHub page if that works.
Yeah, I think showing off what it like how it's laid out, and then maybe just showing us like a what you do with it.
Yep, sure.
Now,
Yeah.
I actually really want to ask before we even do that, how many people here know of the project? Right, like a quick hand count or something.
Serge, you know the project.
Yeah, he's using the digital hand.
Oh, I didn't see it yet. There it is.
Okay. Yeah, and of the people that know about it, how many people actually use it? You can't see it. There's my hand. Yeah. So I mean, not many on here are using it right now, but my guess is it's probably something that is on some people's list. So, yeah, I'm Alan. If you want to, I don't know,
Yeah.
can you just take over screen sharing? I don't even know if you could do that.
So yeah, before you get started with that, one of the things that this, the target originally was like federal and government agencies, right? Because government agencies, we have to follow all these regulations and meet specific compliance requirements outlined by the law or by organizations, needs. And so a lot of this started out in the federal space, and it's so that there's a lot more. When Alan says nobody uses it, I think it's because the footprint of Apple in federal space isn't as big as it is in commercial. So but then we start working with Apple and getting some of these other people involved, especially with CIS, and people start to see that, well, not only you can use this to meet compliance needs and regulations, but you can also secure your fleet in an easy kind of quick way using this guy. So that's kind of one of the things where you're trying to cross those bridges and make things easier for folks that need to do this kind of stuff.
Okay. I gotta just make sure things were closed and put away.
Yeah, you don't want to share your super secret stuff out.
Yeah, I don't really have anything. All right, cool. So the project is hosted on NIST's GitHub page. And so the way it works is and this is something that might change in the future, but right now, when you come to the main page of the repo, you'll see that it's at main, never work on main. So if you clone the project, always look for the OS branch that you are looking to create guidance and all the bits for, because the main branch is used for releases. So we do releases throughout the year, mainly when the OS is released, and then usually halfway through. I think we only did, for Monterey, we only did 2 revisions. So when we're doing changes, which we're constantly doing, we're doing those within the actual OS release branches. So there's Big Sur, Catalina, and Monterey, and you can actually see that we're already starting on Ventura. And if I need to make this bigger, let me know. I have a wide screen, but I'm just focusing on my one display, or the Safari screen. So yeah, recommendation, always check out the branch of the OS you're working on. And so I'll just go to Monterey. And so the way the project is broken down is we're heavily using YAML. We hacked the source code type on the bottom right here so that we could get YAML in there. I remember we were like, there's no way to get YAML, but most of our data is YAML. So that was like pre 0.9 pre-release. But yeah, so the controls, or as you know, when you go through CIS, that PDF that everybody loves to hate, they have all those rules, and you have like what's the check, what's the remediation, description, what, you know, how you apply the profile, stuff like that, maybe some references. And that's kind of what each one of these YAML files is. It's got specific requirements. It has to have the ID, title, discussion, check, result, fix, yada, yada. There's references, tags, and like even down here, mobile config. That's where we store the information for when we go and build the mobile configs with our scripts. So each rule is an individual YAML file. And then we have what are called baselines. And those baselines are where you get your CIS level 1, level 2, or just a STIG. So if we look at like CIS level 2, you'll see it's essentially just another YAML file that has a listing of all those rules, or all those individual YAML IDs. So when we go and run, we have two major scripts that we use, which are generate baseline and generate guidance. But when you run generate guidance against the baseline, it parses all those individual fields within a rule file and generates all the things. And all the things are a PDF and HTML guide that you can hand, you know, your boss, like, this is how we're securing our Macs. It also creates all the configuration profiles needed, whether that's in a plist format, mobile config that's unsigned, and you can even do signed mobile configs, as well as an Excel spreadsheet that you can hand to your auditors. It literally breaks down the entire guide in one huge, disgusting XLS. And yeah, and of course there's a compliance script, which, when it's funny, when we first started the project, the goal of the project wasn't to do this. The goal of the project was to get all the MDM vendors to adopt what we were doing and build something from it. And that never happened. And then they were like, well, can you, because like the first version of our compliance script just checked. It didn't even remediate. Like, it could remediate, but it was all just like commented out, because we didn't want to be like that, like ultimate, you know, like, this is what you need to do, and we were telling you how to do it. So we were very hesitant of doing that. But now that's a thing that we do. And so other folders within here, custom, if you have your own rules from your internal baseline, you can add those within there. Or if you have deviations, one of the new things we added recently is what's called organization defined values. And I'm learning that it's a more heavily used in government, but essentially it's like, hey, we have a screensaver timeout value of 1200 stated in CIS, right? And so, but our org wants to do 1,000 minutes, not 1,200 minutes. So you can override that. And then throughout those rule files, there's actually a variable, and that all gets substituted in. And so when you generate all the things, it has that new value that's assigned to your organization. That's really it as far as like the most important things. Like templates is really needed. Like if you start going into like down the rabbit hole that Dan and I have gone with ASCII doc, which is similar to Markdown, but used more for like docs and books. That's really where we're building out these templates for the documentation, so that you wouldn't have to like repurpose and rebuild stuff. It's just, you can drop items in there and it'll get added to your doc. And yeah, includes has a few files in there, such as a mobile config that is needed to enable firewall private logging, because when you turn on firewall logging, which is a requirement for CIS and I think STIG, and it's also in 853, the logs show you nothing because it's all private. So little things like that we include, password policy XML, and I think there's also a PF firewall file in there. But yeah, I mean, that's the breakdown of the actual project. We have a wiki page that I try to update as much as possible. Dan, I'm talking too much, so why don't you say something? I'll see if I could pull up terminal and
yeah, why don't you go in and bring up the terminal to show how this project actually gets used, because a lot of this information here is just the kind of the core of what we built in order to leverage the tools to generate the documents and the pieces, because that's really what people like want to have. They want to take the configuration profiles and do everything. So this all here is kind of what was built over the last 2+ years in order to make the actual generation of the pieces work. And like Alan said, in the wiki, it goes in a lot of detail on how to clone the project, how to build the scripts, and how to use the project in your own organization, and then and kind of use some of the. There's a lot more details about customizing things and so forth, but you really don't need to do all that to get benefit from using the project. Once you've cloned the project down to your system, you installed a couple of dependencies. The main one is Python and some Ruby gems, which we actually recently just added functionality, which will install the Ruby gems for you without an admin prompt. So you can use the project. You have Python on your system, and you're pretty much good to go. The scripts are all they're all Python scripts. And they're used to create a number of like useful documents, like the PDF file and the HTML file are useful for people reading about your security plan and how you're securing your Macs in your environment. And then you have the config profiles, like Alan said, they're signed or unsigned, where you can upload them to Jamf, or you can deploy them in an MDM in another fashion. The plist files, if you want to use the plist to custom deploy the settings. Along with the compliance script. And the compliance script, like Alan said, started out as just checking and providing you with a report with what checks you're not passing and which settings are not meeting. Now we've taken to the step where we now can integrate it in the workflow where it will remediate and fix the findings automatically for you and get your system into compliance. And
Dan, just really quick, you say that one of the requirements is Python. That's not to run the compliance, obviously. That's just to build the script, right? Just want to clarify
right,
for people.
Yeah. The Python requirement is in order to use the scripts that we made to build the components, to build the outputs that it makes. The script that we're talking about, the compliance script that gets generated, is a Z shell script, and so it's ready to go on your system. Copy and paste it, deploy it to your fleet or into your test environment, or however. And the script actually has a couple different modes. We have an interactive mode where you run from the command line. It gives you a little menu system, and actually we can show you some of that when Alan gets it, when we generate it. But there's a couple different ways to run the script. But yes, the requirement for Python is only to generate the artifacts that we create.
Do you remember if the baseline's workable in Dev Ventura?
In Dev Ventura, should be.
Or should I just do it?
Just
Let's do it.
Are you running Ventura on your production machine?
I mean, I could. I'm on the government. I can basically do whatever. But no, I'm
Oh,
not.
well, yeah. So you don't have to run it on.
Yeah.
So you don't have to run the generation of the items on the platform that you intend it for. So if you want, you can you can create guidance for Monterey running on a Big Sur system if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, if you're on a Monterey system, you can build it for all of them. So
Yeah.
you don't have to,
Basically, the only requirements are you'll need Git to clone, and you actually don't need Git. Like you can use curl to pull down a repo. And if you had Python installed, I actually worked with James Smith, who's out of Australia, on this like bootstrap script, which was more of an experiment, and we were using ASDF to get the project built for, just for testing to see if you could do it without admin prompts or anything. So we were successful in doing so, but yeah. So you need those command line tools just for Git, because actually, you know what? Git did get updated recently. There is an installer package. It's not from like 2018 or something. So, but you still need admin password. But anyway, so the way the project works, and so I'm going to actually show, I guess, do we do the tailoring? Should I do the tailoring? I'll do the tailoring. Why not?
yeah, I mean, do the tailoring, because that's one of the latest features that we've added that makes kind of customizing it in your environment really easy.
So
I think it also gives you a good idea of what it can actually do, which I think is cool.
yeah. It's not fun to watch, but it's cool with the outputs.
Well, we could talk through it, and then we can make it go really fast.
Yeah, I make it really go sort of fast. So you use -K, and earlier I said briefly there's tags. In a YAML file, there are in the rule files at the bottom there's tags, and the tags are essentially keywords. It's metadata that's used throughout the scripts, but in generate baseline, we key off of those tags to build a baseline. So if you wanted to build your own, and this was the old way, if you wanted to build your own, like say, if I wanted to build a Jamf baseline, right? All I would do is take all the individual rules and kind of make custom versions that just had that tag field and maybe modify it a little bit. But now we came up with this idea of tailoring, and it also brings in the ODVs, the organization defined values. So you enter a name for your tailored benchmark. I'm just going to call it Philly, even though I should have worn my Mets shirt. So really should.
We'll just send Gritty your way. It's fine.
It makes me sad because Gritty is cool, but I'm a Rangers fan, but it is what it is. So anyway, so you name it what you want to call it, hit enter, and then you get this message. This message is kind of, we have this whole thing that we talk about, which is benchmarks versus baseline. Dan's a little better at talking about it, so why don't you?
Well, so the benchmarks they exist out there, right? You have CIS and the DISASTIG are the big two benchmarks, and what those are essentially are they've taken the controls out of 853 and chose which ones are applicable to macOS and what they felt was a secure posture, selected a bunch of configs, applied them, and selected values for them. So that's what we call a benchmark. It's like it's you chose which rules you want, and you're choosing the values for it. So if you go in here, like what Allen's doing is he's tailoring the CIS level 2. He's basically taking all the rules that CIS level 2 is already defined and customizing them. We throw a warning up here because if you are strictly met to meet or required to meet CIS level 2 and you change this, then you may not be meeting it. So we wanted to throw that up here. But you can tailor against any of the keywords. You can go tailor against CIS level 2, you can tailor against the STIG, or you can tailor against 853 R5, like high, lower, moderate, which are just the controls that are applied to the high, lower, moderate baselines as defined by NIST. So you can either alter an existing benchmark or start from the baseline controls themselves and then define your own. So there's kind of a little bit of messaging here that kind of explains what you're kind of doing. And so
No one ever reads it.
no one ever reads it, but it's there
Okay.
in case there's a question.
Yeah. So the way the tailoring works, it's interactive. It asks you if you want to add a rule to your benchmark, and I believe it'll say baseline if you choose anything other than CIS or STIG. For the sake of our time, I'll just do a few no, just so we can see that it doesn't show up. I'll do yes.
Yeah. So by default, you'll have yes
I'm
or
just
no.
trying to get
and-
to an ODV, which
right.
no.
So basically, this is asking for every CIS level 2 rule that's been identified. Do you want to include it in your baseline? And you're choosing yes or no. And
So yeah,
if you hit all, it's going to just default to yes to all, and then get you. You can see here now it's prompting you if you want to change the values for a specific rule that have defined values.
yeah. So OS log retention. Sure. I'll say I only want to keep my logs for 90 days. And then says writing a custom rule. I'm not going to overwrite that one because that's, okay. OS software update deferral, 30 days. Let's do 90. 90 seems.
And these default values that are seeing here are the default values that the benchmark has defined. So this here is CIS level 2. If you ran this against the STIG, it would provide the STIG default values. So this is just giving you the values that that benchmark has and giving you an option to modify them if you'd like.
And I'm just going to go through. So I basically made a baseline. We're done. And I'm going to go to VS Code because that's what I use. And I'm just gonna make this a little bigger because my screen is really wide, and I'm gonna change my sharing to code because it's just a lot easier that way, and move the stupid Zoom meeting button. And there you go. So now in build, I have a baselines file called Philly. And let me close this. And if I go into this, you'll see it's just like any of the baselines that are provided by the project. The only differences are they don't like here CIS level 2 from the project. It has some authors listed. There might be some verbiage that we edited when we actually use generate baseline every OS release to create a baseline. And so you'll see like in the standard one, you have audit ACLS files, audit enabled. If I go here, it's not there. So in fact, the only audit rule I have is audit de-enabled, which in reality is kind of silly because I'm enabling, but I'm not configuring anything. But I can add, an author here. And I'll say socks, not kidding. And so we'll go through and you'll see that's it. It's a baseline. One thing to note, we also have what's called supplemental. They're essentially more information. They're guides in a sense. We wrote one for smart cards just to give a little additional information for the firewall PF, file vault, stuff like that. But I'm going to save this and then I'm going to go to custom. And if I go to custom rules, you'll see that I have 2 custom rules. And in those custom rules are just the ODV values. So my log retention is going to be 90 days. And my software deferral is going to be 90 days. And if I go to the actual rules for one of those, if I can find it, OS, there's so many rules. Every once in a while, Bob's like, hey, do you guys think we should add this? And we're both like, no.
No more rules.
No more rules.
No more rules. He said something the other day. He's like, do we need to add more CCIs? And I was like, I can't. Just stop. So you can see, and actually this one, we have to fix this, Dan. Look.
Oh, we do.
Bug. So this should actually be.
But it's got Bob's name next to it. We'll blame him.
Oh, $ ODV. And I can actually, I'll do a little push while we're doing this. So software update must be deferred for ODV days, ODV, all those places that ODV is set. And you'll see by default, here's where the ODVs are set within the rule file. So we have the number of days as the hint. That's what showed up when we ran the script. And everything right now is recommended 30. But when I run the generate guidance, it's not going to use that field because that field has been overwritten by that custom file that we generated. And you can also see for the profile, it's going to be an ODV. So, and I probably can just do this in here. Let's see. I gotta bring up
Do it live. Let's go.
live demos. I don't want that one. I want guidance. All right, so I'm gonna do a build against, what did I call it? Oh yeah, Philly, right? And then so by
Love stuff.
generating this, I'm just gonna make guides. That's it. So if I hit enter, and of course, hey, look at that. We never pushed the other thing to this.
That's why you're in Dev Ventura.
So fun fact, Bob overwritten over all my changes. So thanks, Bob. The other day, I did something for system settings because, you know, they changed system preferences to system settings. All right, hold on. This is why you don't do demos live, right?
On a dev branch.
Hey, it wouldn't be a real live tech demo without some kind of problem.
Pull. Luckily, those two rules are in Monterey, so it's probably going to say up here 13. Well, no one needs to know. I'm going to do 12. 12. Cool.
Yeah. So if you would have ran this on the Monterey branch, all the Monterey macOS 12 would be
Oh,
in.
this is gonna fail because Bob. You know what? No system settings. No systems. There you go. All right. So our baseline's now got. We're not managing system preferences or system settings or whatever. So, so now I'm going to try this again. Let's see. What did he do?
Why don't you run through the tailoring quick?
Oh,
Because you're running.
this is great. No, these are the things. Rules not in file. Power nap disable. Oh, that's my fault. All right. Hold on. So we moved power nap out. Fun fact. CIS was setting it as disabled, but now it's not in system preferences. So these are the fun things you do when you get ready for new OS builds. I'm just going to do this real quick. There we go. So just to give you an idea of what gets built, it is a PDF and an HTML guide. And if I go into this build folder here now, you'll see there's a Philly folder here. And if I go to this Philly PDF, I can actually view within VS Code. And there you go. I have a security configuration called Philly, and it's tailored from CIS level 2. And now I can go through it. And there's all the rules. And if I go further, you'll see that the system preferences stuff is all gone. And I got a forward and a scope, and that's all editable. I'm an
No sweet
author.
footer.
Oh, there's no sweet. Oh, there's a sweet foot. Okay.
Yep.
Dan's really proud of his footer. Did some CSS with PDFs. No, it was the PDF YAML file. And
It is a very nice footer.
it
Dan.
is a very nice footer.
Wasn't it your suggestion, John?
No, it was Jordan's, I think.
It was Jordan's. Okay. I thought
Because he was
okay.
trying to get it to work and it didn't.
Yeah, you wanted a footer. So
It's a
now
sweet
we got a
footer. There's an Easter egg in JNUC. See if you can find it. And some acronyms, because the government loves acronyms. Probably should go through these and probably update the stuff. But there you go. So, and this is really big for me. I don't know if it's really big for you.
Yeah, and if you see one of the rules, there you go. I was like,
I was gonna go to the-
I like showing the rules off.
Yeah, I was gonna go to the one of the ones that I
ODV'd.
so it didn't take. Oh, there it is. Configure install log to retention. Oh, that is ugly. Anyway, here's a rule. So the description, you have your ID that's pulled from the YAML file, the description that's pulled from the YAML file, the check, and yes, this is the actual check for install log retention. It is horrible. It is a horrible check. I hate it. Dan and I hated this very much. So
Well, it's all Apple's fault because of the way that they do their ASL logging. Anyway,
anyway, and then if the result is yes, this is a finding. How do you remediate? Which is also horrible. Here's where those references are to 853 CIS. And then let me find one that's a profile. Come on. No, why are you? Is that a profile? That's a profile. So disable automatic opening of save files in Safari, right? And so you'll have the note, anything that's CIS, we don't have anything really other than must be because we're not allowed to use their pros, which is fine by me because that's a lot of words. And so we have the check, and weirdly enough, this one is still using the old check. Is the Safari one supposed to be using the old check, or did I find another bug?
no, this one has to, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's because it's in user based. So originally when we first built all of this, we were using the profiles binary to print out the list of profiles and then basically grepping. This worked, except for people can spoof that, right? You can put auto open safe downloads equals 0 in a organization field in a profile, and it would work. So that one day when Armin, who also works at Jamf, wrote a blog post about using JXA to do checks for profiles, that's when we jumped on board and got real gross. And look, John, there's your little fix made it in. So
Yay.
this would be 90, except for I moved over to the other. I stashed that fix, so this would be 90, but you see there 90, 90, 90. So it does fill it in, and so you get all of that. But here's where things get fun, and let me bring this back up. So I ran with no flags, and so if I actually, just run generate guidance, you'll see. Just clear that out. You can run it with a bunch of things. So -p will do a profiles for everything. -s will do that compliance script. -x makes that sweet Excel spreadsheet. And -H with the subject key ID of your signing cert will sign all the things for the profiles. And the only required thing is your baseline. The reference is if you're using custom reference and you want it to show up in the script, that's how you would have it show up. So I'm just going to run this now with -s, -p, -x, and I'm giving away from the build baselines. Really wish I had like a gritty logo right now because that'd be pretty cool because I could put it in there, but I don't. So
Not the
much
same thing.
So
Come on, Jeff. I think you got that handy.
oh, I forgot to what? Oh,
Still
YAML.
got a YAML.
The gritty logo.
There you go. Forgot the YAML. I'm gonna run this, and it's gonna do all the things. And I'm gonna scroll back up. I say all the things a lot. I don't know why. Anyway, so it sees that there's custom rules, so it's building all that out. It's going to create those configuration profiles and the settings plists as well. A little warning that we were asked to put in a long time ago because, funny enough, everybody was locking their systems because they were running 853 high against their system when they don't even have smart cards. And then they would go to a fix and apply all the profiles, and they were like yelling at us you broke my machine, and we're like, did you read the warning? No. And so warning still lives there. Anyway, compliance script, Excel document, and those guides. So now if I go back into this build folder, I have the ADOC, the HTML, PDF, XLS. I have profiles, preferences, actual mobile configs, preferences, which this is used for exemptions. And if you use Jamf Pro, we have a script you can use that is not in the project, but will let you build that custom JSON schema so you can exempt users from rules. And then the compliance script. And this is the grossest thing ever. It's just nothing.
I think you're. I don't think you're giving it enough credit. It's actually
if you do
really
all,
good.
It's like 7,000 lines. But imagine, none of you have to touch this, right? You build your baseline and the script's done. You just upload this or apply it, upload in Jamf, use it in Monkey. I don't care where you use it, right? Like, I wasn't working at Jamf when I built this with Dan and Bob. Like, we built this for everyone. I don't care who uses it. Like, and so I can actually run this against my, let me run this against mine. Let's see how really good my,
We're going to see how well Jamf secures their devices.
yeah.
Build Philly.
What was it called again? Oh, yeah, Philly.
Philly.
You want
I want build Philly.
Build Philly.
Right. Yeah, sorry. And I need sudo too. So just,
It'll yell at you if you want.
yeah, I know. I'll go back. And I'm gonna do minus check. Actually, let's show the suite.
Just show the little
If
interaction.
it's gonna work in VS Code. Let's see. Should. So if I run it without any flags, so there's 2 flags. You can
work.
run it. Actually, there's 3 now, right? So you could do minus check, which checks, minus fix, which remediates. And we added, because John asked for something. John asks for a lot of things. So here's the thing about it. It's an open source project. We have a Slack channel. If you have issues, come to the Slack channel, ask questions. John's there. We're there. We answer. But also, if you have ideas or file issues, we get to them pretty quickly, and implement them in a, was it next day, same day for some things. We don't always merge it into the main code right away, just because we have so many branches and we hate that. But anyway, so like I said, if you ever find any bugs, if you want anything added to it, integration with, help with integrating with a different MDM or solution, like, we're always there to help. So if I run this and, hey, look at that, I still use a piv. There you go. I don't have anything cool. So I'm going to run a scan. I am not running a remediation, just FYI. So I'm going to run a scan, and it literally will check. Maybe there it goes. It's checking all the stuff on my machine. And you see there's not doing so bad. I think this is like the world.
You got a couple passes.
I got some passes. I see more passes than fails. I think this is going to take a while. This is the worldwide. This is the application thing, and I have Xcode, so sit back.
So, Alan, while this is running, especially after it runs, if you could show the audit file that it generates, because if you're using an MDM, which you should be, especially like Jamf or something, when you're running this project, you want to collect that information from that audit file. There's people out there that have posted, EAs for collecting, counting, or for collecting the information of what has failed or something in a Jamf EA from this audit file. Wow, that's not a great score.
I passed.
So yeah.
So it generates. We have, and actually, one of the early. Was it stats? Yeah, there you go. That was used for Workspace ONE.
And you have compliance too, right?
What?
Do you have compliance too or something?
It's compliant.
compliant.
These were used. So if anybody on here
Compliant.
uses Workspace ONE, we added some fields because there was a request from somebody from Workspace ONE to add. So I don't know what that 1624 is there, Dan. So we got I don't know
16
why.
passed, 24 failed.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
why is it echoing it out? I don't know. Whatever.
It worked for the person that asked for it, so.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh no. Anyway, whatever. So there's also a reset, and what let's see if I can
Or
find.
there's also the check, because you can show that, and you don't need the interactive. You don't need to run the interactive tool. You can run it with minus check.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that again.
Oh, because it'll take too
They
long.
want to watch
Running it with
Xcode.
minus check will do the check without prompting you. So that's where you can put, use it in Jamf or some
Yeah.
other
So
method.
if
run
you
in the background.
upload this into Jamf or Workspace ONE or wherever, you can do minus check. If you do minus check and minus fix, it will actually fix first and then it will check. And so I'm trying to remember where everything is. So if I go to, do you want the log file or do you want the?
Well, show
Yeah.
both, because it generates, so the script outputs a log file, which is basically the output of what you saw in the check. And then it also writes the results to a plist file, which is easy. It makes it easy to parse and do some things with. It'll tell you the rule name and whether it was found as a finding or not, and then
Really?
some.
There you go. So here's the log file that gets generated. So it shows that, it will normally go begin baseline scan, go through, and it writes everything. If I had an exemption for anything, it would show that I failed, but it would show also that I have an exemption and give the reason for the exemption. One thing to note about exemptions, like just because you have an exemption doesn't mean you pass, right? You're always going to fail. You just have a reason for failing. You want to use Siri or use AirDrop or whatever. And so the other bit is read library preferences. Oh, it's like you're getting sneak peeks. But
Your autocomplete.
yeah, there you go. So you get a plist, and if finding is one, you failed. We don't disable AirDrop.
And so, so folks have written an extension attribute against this file to then report it back up into Jamf.
Yeah. And
you
so
can do
that,
whatever you want with it. So
yeah. And then, so like, if you were to use this in Jamf, you would set like an extension attribute to do the count for how many times finding is equal to 1. If it's more than 0, fix. And when it fixes, it goes through, it does all the fixes, and then does a check again, and then hopefully your findings are 0.
If anybody needs a ZAs, just tap me because I have them as well.
Yeah.
In my environment.
So this,
And
I mean, this is a way to kind of do like, continuous remediation, right? Your systems, you have somebody that takes your system out of compliance and it'll check it, and then next time it checks in, it'll remediate it for you if you so choose, right? So you can have like this, self-healing compliance posture on your endpoints.
And that's kind of it, I think. Am I missing anything? Bob has this really cool. Should I show the really cool thing that Bob has, or should we just leave that? We'll leave that for Jay now.
Let's leave that for JNOC. We want to get some surprises, but I also want to give some time here for Q&A because there were a couple questions in the chat. But first of all, Alan and Dan, thank you so much for showing this. I know you like you said, you went over this earlier today and for your JNUG presentation, so you're probably a little burned out from that. But I do want to leave some time for Q&A for some people that put it in here. So if you asked a question, feel free to ask it again, or if not, I'm just going to go through the chat and look for them. But if you find your question if you ask your question before I find it, that's better. Guess I'm asking questions. I found one. Mike, is this useful to implement if you're not strictly required to do it? So basically, Mike, can you elaborate on that? It sounds like if you don't have a baseline, you think it's useful or?
Yeah, I was thinking, I work in EDU and nobody's requiring me to implement anything like this, but I think there's some good ideas. I could probably just steal those as ad hoc, but I was just curious if this is useful outside of if you're not working for a government agency or something that's strictly saying you have to adhere to this or that.
So I think, yeah, I think it definitely could be useful in any environment that wants to manage their security settings, right? So if you have a desire to have, you know, a handful of settings applied to your systems, you could use this to build out a baseline containing just those settings that you care about, and then deploy the pieces out to your endpoints, and essentially make your own baseline that you decide to follow in your environment. There's because we do have like you saw the list of rules. We have, I don't know how many rules we have, Alan, like 300 in there. So there's a lot to choose from, and if there are things that you want to do in your environment, you could pick and choose from them and base it off of like NIST 853 security controls, which are the standard for meeting security compliance, and then choose the rules and deploy it in your environment. I think it could definitely be valuable.
One thing to note, at least that I've seen, just not to, there are these, so like, are you familiar with like FedRAMP?
Not really.
Okay, so
Sorry.
there's FedRAMP, which like there's requirements for, you know, for how servers are configured, how services are configured, and it's a nightmare. But there's also state ramp. Texas has their own Texas ramp. Arizona has their own Arizona ramp. Virginia has their own that they are building up. And those apply to, and I think state ramp is going to start applying to EDUs. So those will probably, especially universities, those will probably apply to universities. I don't know if it's going to apply to private universities, but I do know that like that is something that is coming, just because, you know, that's kind of the world I'm in right now. So you may not be doing this now, but down the line,
You might be doing it later.
You might have those requirements.
Yeah, there's a lot of education people here, Alan. So
Sorry.
And yeah, I'm former education, and education is an interesting place because it's an area that I think needs security and doesn't have enough of it.
Yep.
So
I remember when I
Mike, does
told
that help
them
you?
we were.
I mean,
Yeah, thanks. I remember when I told them we weren't going to bind to AD anymore, and their collective heads exploded. So, I
go
mean,
get that.
I'm sure the ask will come for this kind of stuff eventually. So I appreciate this. This will help me get ahead of it.
Yeah, no worries. And like,
Well,
so Mike, I think like, I can't remember who it was, but someone did a monkey admin, like wrote a bunch of stuff for that, for the project. So I don't remember. I think it was John Crane did it. Like the day we put this out was the first night of the Mac DevOps YVR. And I remember like Joel built something and John built like a monkey admin thing for it. So
oh, sweet. Yeah, I bet there's.
it's probably super old, and because I don't think he's ever touched it since, but you know, the bones are there. So it's you could look at that. But again, this is completely MDM agnostic. Like you can run this on anything. Most of it you do need an MDM because there's some profiles that require supervision, but you know, in the scripts, some of the changes and fixes require full disk access, but yeah, pick your poison. I don't know, whatever.
Thanks.
So I got a question here from Sean. Have you considered adding a feature that shows a description of each rule when asked during the tailored benchmark process?
That sounds horrible. I don't want to do that. We did have that. Just
Oh.
all of text would be so hard. It'd be so frightening.
I will remind everybody this is a community-driven open source project, and anybody can put things in. Even I, who hates doing Git because I'm terrible at it, put in a change into the project. So
He's the contributor.
If it's something you think that you would, yeah, you wouldn't, if you think it's something worthwhile, please feel free.
I think we did it at once, and it just because
Yeah,
it's
part
free text.
of
Like
part of the issue
I
is
guess-
that it's a command line interactive. You know, you're looking at text and it just spits out so much information, and in formatting it, you're so limited with what kind of formatting you can do in a terminal window. So
Yeah, the reason I was asking for it is just that I'm thinking if I were to go and do that and create a tailored baseline, I would have to open up the reference documents to check each of those rules and figure out what they are, because like I'm not living in there every day. So I'm not just going to see,
Right.
you know, audit underscore ACLS underscore flags and be like, oh yeah, this is that setting that I care about.
I will say one thing, Sean, as somebody I've been building our script at my organization for now probably a month and a half, and fine tuning it and everything. The great thing is that you only have to do this hopefully once, because or once per OS, I would say. Like once you have the rules built or your org defined standards or your ODVs out, you hopefully won't have to rerun it all the time. So that's at least one saving grace, I would say.
And people will kind of have that PDF from CIS open to the side and kind of go through it as they're doing it, as a way. But yeah, no, I think I even had a build that had it, and it was just like, no, this is not.
well, and one of the things we did try to do is in the title, the rule ID, we tried to be as descriptive as possible without making the rule name this long. It would try to be kind of concise as to what the rule is doing. So we try to do some self-documenting with that process, but it's definitely, I mean, yeah, I can understand the need for it. Just trying to figure out how to make it look presentable, I think, is our challenge.
I mean, one idea would be maybe add another option for D, and if you type D, it spits out the description and then reprompts you for yes, no, all.
You'd have to pick a different flag. D's used for debug.
He's just giving an example. I think V for verbose or J for John mode.
I
didn't
know.
I didn't mean a flag. What I meant was, so for each rule, it prompts you to say, hey, do you want to include this rule? Yes, no, all. Maybe it's YND all, and then D spits out the description. Because I think most of them, I wouldn't need it. Like I would just be able to tell, right? Defer
Right.
all 30 days. That's obvious. But there's a few that I might be a little bit confused.
So like as an ad hoc, choose which ones you want to read the description on. Like, there's a thought.
Yeah, it's not very important, honestly. Like this is not going to be a make or break feature.
Now, this is what happens. You say this, and then tomorrow, Dan will be like,
Alan and Dan are going to be at it tomorrow.
I'll be like 1 o'clock in the morning, like, why did we do this? And then,
But yeah, I mean, like what Alan was saying to her, we're so invested in this. We're talking all the time, and I mean, we're committing Git commits to branches daily. I mean, it feels like, right? So we're always tinkering. We're always trying to make this better. We're always trying to make it. We wanted to make this a tool for everybody to use, so that everybody can benefit from. So if there are features that people, would find beneficial, we're definitely open to implementing them.
So I think I might have been the last question in the chat. So if I can, I've got another question. So I mean, I've run like the baselines and stuff. I've looked at the project a bit, but I'm struggling a little bit to figure out exactly how to implement it in my organization. And I think part of that is because historically for most of these rules, we would either include the configuration profile payload in the existing Jamf profiles that may have other settings, and some of which are non-compositable. And then for the scripted settings, we would typically like set up an EA and then like an ongoing policy to remediate that when a discrepancy is found. So I guess that's kind of like where I struggle is, do I use this to generate my baseline, maybe working with my security team, and then keep building those things out the way that I have in the past? Or am I better off doing what you guys talked about with like maybe running the compliance script and turning that into an EA and then just running the full remediation script if anything is out of compliance?
How many EAs do you have in your organization?
I don't know the count, but it's a lot, like probably in the hundreds.
You could trim that down to 4. So
And so,
that's
so one of the things with the remediation script is that it doesn't, so it'll run, but it's only going to run against rules that it found as needing to be touched, right? So even if you have 100 rules and you have 2 that are out of compliance, it's only going to try to fix 2. It's not going to try to do anything else every time it runs. So it's not like it's very intensive, unless somebody has 1,000 things out of compliance, but it should only be running against the ones that are found as a finding.
Yeah, this
So-
if you use the old Jamf scripts, it's a little more robust than that one, which is what I used to use.
So I guess my follow-up question then, Dan, would be, is that what you're doing? Is you have the EA that's checking the compliance and then you're just running the script if anything is out of compliance?
Right. So what we do is I have, if something's out of compliance, it goes into a smart group. If any system has anything out of compliance, it goes into a smart group, and that it runs a scan every day. So every day it checks any system that falls into non-compliant status goes into the smart group. That smart group is scoped to another policy that's running the remediation all the time, every check-in. So it's only running against systems that are out of compliance, and it's only running on the systems every time. And hopefully, if it's not ever getting if it's not becoming compliant, I'm seeing that the system is just running this every time and something's wrong, where it's not able to fix it. So I can dive in and see why this one setting won't get fixed. But otherwise, yeah, it's running against all the systems that have fallen into that smart group and running the remediation every check-in.
yeah, and when that remediation runs, it only remediates anything that has a finding. So it'll check first, like, hey, is there an exemption in place? Hey, is there a finding? If there's not a finding, it moves to the next check or the next fix. So it's not going to like redo it each time. So if it's only one thing, it's going to fly through it, fix it within a couple of seconds, and you're good to go.
And one thing that Alan kind of mentioned, it does check against exemptions, and we didn't go into it in this presentation, but one of the things that we have as part of the check is the concept of having an exemption. So if you have a rule that says your systems in your fleet must have screensaver set to 20 minutes, but you have 2 systems that are like, no, I need it set to 30 minutes. You can make an exemption with the P list, and it'll understand that is an exemption, and so it can be excluded, it can be counted, it can be tracked and reported. In that it's a little kind of confusing with the exemptions, but it does allow you to have a baseline and then have deviations within your organization.
Cool. And then, so on configuration profiles, particularly the non-composable ones, I think I saw, I don't remember if it was a comment or someone or somewhere else where somebody was saying, oh no, never mind, it was in the Slack that I went over to, where like someone was saying, oh, well, Ventura has a new feature, just add a second configuration profile for that one feature for Ventura. But what are you guys doing with the non-composable ones?
So
Profiles are, yeah, you go.
no, I'll let you talk, because the way Jamf handles configuration profiles, it makes it tricky, right? Because Jamf, if you're importing profiles, you're stuck with what Jamf supports and how they treat the settings. If you upload a signed profile, then it is what it is. So you kind of have to play this game of like, which profiles are you using from Jamf versus what will you be using from the project, and kind of. And the other thing is the remediation doesn't remediate configuration profile settings. It can't.
Yeah.
So it
Understood.
can only scripts because it can't deploy profiles. I suppose with the new Jamf API, might be able to do some sort of query, but I think that's out of the scope of what we've done. But anything that's configuration profiles kind of set it as is. So you kind of have to manage it that way.
Like my recommendation is always use what's in, and this is from a Jamf perspective, right? Because Jamf is, I'm more on the protect side, so Jamf with profiles has always been fun. Like I was a Mac admin for 20 years. I've used Jamf since Casper 7. So my recommendation is always use the built-in, maybe not for restrictions, right? The restrictions hasn't been redone. It hasn't been refactored like the others where you can like turn off, turn on, pick and choose what you want. So because of that, I would probably, for the restriction stuff, which is a lot of it, right? That's a big portion of it. I would use, and then the other fun thing is sometimes you upload a profile and it doesn't do anything. It doesn't show up. So you can do a signed profile and that will work, but then you can't view the contents, right? So they give it a really good description. Otherwise, you're never going to see it. And that's actually something we're working on to try to make that a little easier with signed profiles. Or you have the preferences. When you do a custom plist, Jamf, for whatever reason, I don't know why. Again, I'm on the protect side. It wraps it in that like MCX settings XML doohickey. So like if you do com.apple.security.firewall and you try to do a custom plist in macOS 12 and up, I think it stopped working. So you have to use the firewall settings that are within security and privacy, and thankfully it's one of those refactored, right? So the initial setup can be tricky, but that's just because MDM, right? But once it's set, you're good, and you actually don't have to generate all the things and do the script. So it's might be a little bit of onboarding at first, but that's like with anything. Like before,
I will say, like in my organization, I have a mix. I have signed profiles that are uploaded. I have Jamf specific configuration profiles. I also use the custom plist a lot because for most of the time, except for the firewall one, dropping in the custom plist will work. So and that's a little bit more. It's a little bit more modular where you can pick and choose which plist, and the project generates the plist for you, so you can copy and paste the plist into the custom application settings and deploy that. So in NASA here, we have a mix. It's just a matter of getting it in place for it to be compliant. It depends on how deviations are going to work. If I need to deviate from a profile that I have uploaded that was signed, I'll have to undo that and rebuild it and send it up and just get it into place. But luckily, that's not happening all the time. Once our system is approved and in use, that's done until a change request is put through and approved, and those don't happen too often. So again, like Alan said, the initial part is a little bit of a heavy lift, but
yeah. And
well, hey, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, speaking from experience, Sean, like I said, I've been working on our baseline for about a month or 2 months now, just to make sure everything's good. I mean, now, mind you, there's been a lot of changes in the script, so I've been also testing some of these changes that have been coming out in the project itself. But it is a nice. I mean, it is something that you're going to have to devote some time to, and I'm in the same boat as Dan, by the way. We do a mixture of signed. We use most of the built-in stuff, but the big one we don't use is the restrictions, because the one big thing is the software updates really get screwed up if you don't set them in there. But it is going to depend on the organization, of course, and how much you want the script to do, I guess, or how much of the project you want to use. Because frankly, I don't use any of the config profiles that the project gives me. What I normally do is I kept my base. I had a baseline in place already. I ran the compliance script. I saw what was broken, and I took a look and went through every single one that's broken myself and say, okay, these need updated configs. I would go manually create those configs, put them in, run the script again, and do it. So, it worked out pretty well for me, because I was able to build those compliances, myself, or those config profiles myself, and make sure and check everything one by one. But your method might be different.
Hey, thanks to all of you. These are some questions I've had for a while, and it's great getting to hear the answers from you all. So I do have more questions, but I'm going to shut up for a while and let some other people ask their questions.
I've got a question.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, it's very general. Like after y'all released the project, we started to see a lot of the other MDM vendors, the non-Jamf MDM vendors. I think Mosul came out and Kanji came out and started talking about their CIS benchmarking. Can y'all comment on whether these vendors are kind of in touch with the project, or they're just kind of taking it and running with it? What that's kind of looking like from a proliferation through the rest of the market standpoint?
I can't speak for others, and I don't think I should speak for others. And I don't know if I can say anything about Jamf now that we're a public company. So Dan.
I don't have those same restrictions. So yes, over the course of the development of the project, we have been in direct contact with a number of vendors, including the Kanjis and the Mosuls and the even like Simple MDM and then some of the other security companies. We've been talking with Splunk and Tenable and a couple others for them to use what the project has built and leverage that in their tool and in their solution. And to what extent they've actually done that, I don't know. I don't know the full details. I just know that we've been in touch, and we make sure that they are aware of changes that are coming, and so that they can adjust as needed. And so yeah, and I think, Alan can just probably speak to one of the first adopters. Was in Command Reporter.
Right. So Command Reporter does have, if you kind of open it up, it has, support for it. Check. Though I will say some of the baselines need to be updated. So there's that. But,
yeah,
it was a first step at adopting an open source project, and it gave it, some visibility. So it was great.
And with Apple being and kind of involved with the project, they try to get other vendors involved and put us in front of other folks. And Bob from NIST, since NIST is hosting the project, he's a big voice in reaching out to a lot of these vendors and making them aware of it, especially with the release of the special publication that came out for 800.219, which outlines using this project for securing macOS. For federal systems, trying to get the word out that this is a supported project by both the federal government, Apple, and folks in the industry that are trying to make this work well for everyone.
Cool, thank you.
So just as a general question, how often are the CIS benchmarks updated? And how often do benchmarks get dropped?
So CIS did an update
Like two
weeks ago. Yeah. They gave us a heads up about a month before. And if you looked at the timeline of the release to the point that there was a dev Monterey CIS update branch, I went through and redid all because they had 2 rules and then removed a bunch. And then because of that, all those horrible numbers that mean nothing had to be redone in no particular order and no rhyme or reason. So I was very angry, but that was done pretty quickly, right? Like they released, and then the same day they released, we merged. Removing, so one thing to note, we're taking the stance of supporting N-2. So this isn't so much about benchmarks, but when Ventura is released, we're setting Catalina to archive. We're not touching it. Like it'll be there, but we're not fixing any rule files.
Well,
say this. I bet you we changed something. I just know it.
Bob will want
well,
to
I
change.
mean, I went through all the CS stuff, benchmarks, and guidance for our org, and a couple of things that we aren't doing, and I was just wondering why they're still in the
That's so I do know, like I can say,
like optical drives.
so there is every Friday a CIS
Yep.
meeting where you can voice your opinions and you can be told that you're wrong. No I'm kidding. But you can
Come join us, Serge.
and you can fight, and it
Our
works
security folks.
because the keychain lock on sleep is gone. The unpair when nothing is
Oh,
paired,
the
turn off
keychain lock on sleep is gone.
is gone. So but like when I was going through, I was like, wait, did this go? Like the keychain rule that was like horrible, that made like no sense, it's gone. So
Yeah, so
You
so
go
is
on-
the Bluetooth off, and there's one other one that was removed, I think.
yeah, there were a
Alright.
Right.
few. I was like,
I will have to do that because that's been a point
Yeah.
of contention for a couple of things. It's not; those weren't going to be in our first version of like what we're calling secure config. But that's definitely something they wanted to look at because it was in the guidance.
yeah. Well, so CIS usually does 2 or 3 releases per OS cycle. I don't really
Usually.
keep for them.
And I think that so we've been talking to CIS a lot since the project came out, and so I think they're, a lot of these changes came with conversations that we were trying to get things in sync with what everybody's doing. So, and I know that they're more actively involved in trying to clean up the macOS benchmarks too. So.
Yeah, Serge, like Al mentioned, there is a community call every Friday. I know it might be hard for some people to make, but I'm actually on it now every Friday. There's a lot of discussion about certain rules because some of these are still around from olden times, like the optical one was there, the EFI check. There's a couple that are I don't know if it went yet, but because it's N-2. So there's a lot of discussion around certain ones that we know to be problematic. One of the big ones is always the hibernate mode, right? Hibernate mode has always been problematic, but also it's very difficult now with M1 because certain things, like power nap is another one. These are questions that, how do they work with M1? So having more voices on that call, or even just making a ticket in the CIS benchmark in the CIS workbench, whatever the heck it's called, is really useful because we take a lot of community input, and we're trying to do our best to make sure that the rules make sense. You might get lectured by at least one person on the call for taking certain things out, but he means well. But there's a lot of good conversation to be had on there, and there's a lot of good points that make up on there.
Yeah, I do believe Workbench is it free?
I don't know. I just sign up through. I mean, you could go to cissecurity.org or was cissecurity.org and sign up for a free account and just go and look at the workbench or go and look at the
Oh yeah, you can get in for free. It's just
Yeah.
if you want the artifacts and stuff, that's where you pay.
Right. Yeah. If you sign up it's a free sign in for it, and you can then get access to, there's information in there on how to join the call.
But yeah, I would highly recommend it. And like I said, like at least 4 to 5. There are a ton, because so one thing for CIS, there are some checks that if you ever look in their documentation, it says automated or manual. We don't add the manual checks to our documentation. It's actually a supplemental thing at the end that just says CIS manual controls, because we can't score against them. So why are we going to put them in there? And one of them was that keychain lock on sleep. So when I was going through, I was like, wait, this is gone. I've been fighting this one for like 7 to 8 years. And like finally. So yeah, if you do attend and you have a good reason, they listen. It takes a little while.
All right.
I just shared the link for the macOS community in CS Workbench. Like, again, I think you can just sign up for free. Apparently, it says I'm a member in the corner, so I don't know. I use my work account. So I don't know. Anybody have any other questions?
Not so much a question, but Chris asked pretty much one of the things that I was wondering. So it's partial question, partial comment, I guess. My org was looking at Workspace ONE, and in Workspace ONE for Windows, there's a magical CIS button that, as I understand it, you just click and it applies the CIS benchmark or baseline. If you have any sway with any MDM vendors and could convince them to do that, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, Protect has that, doesn't it?
Not
Mm,
yet.
Sort of.
let's
Wink,
just,
wink, nudge, nudge. I'm sure.
Isn't it more like reporting on whether or not you are compliant versus automated
Yeah,
Yes.
remediation and deployment?
Yes. For now.
that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, so
This is
that-
recorded, Alan.
I'm not
That's
saying
one of those-
anything that I wouldn't say, so
I mean, that's kind of been one of the underlying goals of,
Yeah.
from the beginning, is getting MDMs to make the magic button for this, right? We wanted MDM vendors to be involved to say, hey, make 853 moderate a button so you can just do it. And we're not quite there yet, I don't, but there's hope.
Yeah, I really got curious because one of you mentioned that, like, when you first created this, you were hoping the MDM vendors would just kind of pick up on it, and it doesn't quite seem like they have to the level that maybe you were implying you'd hoped.
So, some of them have more so than others, I think, and they've taken their own approach to it. So I think, yeah, I think
There's
Chris, like Kanji and Mosul, I think,
Yeah.
had their attempts at applying it.
there's a on the wiki, there's a vendor attribution page. Basically, any vendors that have contributed or implemented various portions on the GitHub. I don't know how updated it is, but you could see some of the stuff in there.
it's not that old.
I think we worked on it a couple of weeks ago.
Maybe. But yeah, I mean, Windows is also a lot easier, right? You have a GPO setting and you hit a button and then it pulls down like a bunch of text from CIS and it probably just pushes it.
Except that it has 9 billion controls.
Yeah, no, I know. So,
So many more controls on Windows.
Yes.
but yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was our goal was when we started this is like, hey, you have it, now do it. And then it became, oh great, we're doing it. So but yeah.
Cool. If anybody has any more questions, reach out on the Slack, I would say. We're it's 7:30 now. I want to leave a little time for some open communication, unless anybody has any really major pressing questions that they really want to ask Alan and Dan while they're here. I'm going to take silence as no. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. This was really enlightening, I'm sure, for a lot of people. I can't stress enough how important this project is. If you work in a high security environment, it's great to see somebody, doing God's work, I would say, replacing some old outdated scripts that a lot of us are probably still been using. So where can we find you guys on the Slacks or?
macOS security compliance, is that?
I mean, what are your names on there if people don't know?
I'm Golby.
If you want to give that out.
I mean, it's fine. I'm Golby. At Golby. Dan's at Brodjieski.
I'm just that Brodjieski.
It's really hard for.
It's easy. Dan hides by the last name. That's all. So, but yeah, guys, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you jumping on here, and we'll look forward to seeing the JNUC presentation.
Yeah, we'll see some of you guys there if you guys.
I won't look forward to that.
If you see Alan or Dan at JNUC, if you're going, buy them a beer because they've dealt with a lot of work with this, and they deserve it. So.
Yes.
I
see you at JNUC if it still happens.
I mean, I think it's happening, right?
Why wouldn't it?
Oh, come on, they've given up. It's fine. We're going.
They've given up. There's
We're
no
gonna party
pandemic
on the-
anymore.
There's the
There is
boat.
no pandemic in Bossing Say, guys.
For COVID, I mean,
Yeah, what about monkeypox? What's going to happen in the next month with that?
That's not real, Sean.
I mean, unless we're like sharing clothes, I think we're okay, right? I don't think we're like, as long as we're not like swapping shirts and stuff.
Does that not happen at JNUC?
No.
You must have been going to a
I mean-
different JNUC from me.
What happens at JNUC?
Yeah. See, yeah, all I remember one time is breaking my phone and causing people to think that I died the last time I went to JNUC. That's a story for another time now. Yeah, you can hear my wife laughing in the background. Partner, excuse me. You guys can hang around, obviously, if you'd like to, but I think we're going to stop the recording and open the floor for any discussions, for open discussion, I guess, for things that we shouldn't record. So I'm going to stop the recording now, but give me 1 second. So Mike, you can stop the recording here.